Hey, it's Jordan. I am delighted to be joined by Steve Neavling. He's an investigative reporter for the Detroit Metro Times, which, even if you don't live in Michigan, you guys should check out the Detroit Metro Times. They're independent outlet doing actual living, breathing journalism out in Detroit. And you've done great work on many things. And we've talked about the Flint water cover-up, which definitely involves Detroit too. But you've actually become the story in a way for a story that never should have been a story over the last few days.
Yeah.
I just want to give the timeline because it's, to me, pretty black and white. Yeah. So Dana Nessel, the Attorney General of Michigan, she decided to charge 11 students and alumni at the University of Michigan over a campus protest from May. She announced those charges in September. So that was quite the lag. So you interviewed Rashida Tlaib, Congresswoman representing the Detroit area. First, I want to show Congresswoman Tlaib had tweeted out on September 12th, the AG failed to deliver justice for the victims of the Flint water crisis, but has time to bring frivolous charges that only serve to silence those speaking out against a genocidal apartheid regime. This shameful attack on students' rights will fail. Follow the Constitution. And she posted in her tweet your story for Metro Times on the Attorney General's charges. That stood out to me because we could talk about it in a bit. I don't really know many Democratic politicians, particularly in Michigan, that have actually called out Nessel for her horrendous sabotage, based on my reporting, of the Flint criminal probe. So that was Rashida Tlaib tweeting about it. I believe the next day or that day, you did an interview with her where she said about Nessel's charges. To be clear, you pointed out, which is a fact. You pointed out Nessel happens to be the first Jewish person elected Attorney General of Michigan, and Congresswoman Tlaib told you, quote, "We've had the right to dissent, the right to protest. We've done it for climate, the immigrant rights movement, for Black lives, and even around issues of injustice among water shutoffs. But it seems that the Attorney General decided if the issue was Palestine, she was going to treat it differently. And that alone speaks volumes about possible biases within the agency she runs." So, I mean, just factually speaking, the Congresswoman did not mention or even infer anything about the Attorney General's religion.
Never. Never.
But, right. Somehow, days later, on the 20th, Attorney General Nessel tweeted, "Rashida's religion should not be used in a cartoon to imply that she's a terrorist. It's Islamophobic and wrong." And of course, she was referring to that really disgusting cartoon that the Detroit News did, basically trying to insinuate Rashida Tlaib was somehow a member of Hezbollah using the pager attacks as their humor, I guess. It was pretty gross. So she said, "Rashida's religion should not be used in a cartoon to imply that she's a terrorist. It's Islamophobic and wrong. Just as Rashida should not use my religion to imply I cannot perform my job fairly as Attorney General. It's anti-Semitic and wrong." So before we get to the media, who basically ran with the Attorney General's claim, the Attorney General, you've reported on her. Was that surprising to you that she was a week later insinuating that Congresswoman Tlaib had somehow, I guess, was inferring something about her being Jewish in her criticism?
I thought it was a bold time to attack Rashida at a time when she just got attacked in a very disgusting racist cartoon, and she did it that day. So that surprised me. I have heard, though, that Dana Nessel has taken this Hamas attack last year very seriously, and she's lost some friendships over it. But it did surprise me that she would come out and mention this on the day that cartoon was published. But also, I was surprised that she used Rashida's words, misrepresented them, and then attacked her based on that misrepresentation. That surprised me.
Because I want to drill in on that, because I think she Congresswoman Tlaib used the phrase biases to refer to the Attorney General. And I think that's what the Attorney General was zeroing in, that somehow Tlaib was inferring by biases that she's Jewish. I don't take it that way, and I'm Jewish. Yeah. But you were saying from your reporting, Attorney General Nessel, who is Jewish, she has been, however, moved or affected by the Hamas attack, and she's lost friendship over it, which would indicate to me that her charges against these pro-Palestine protesters on student campuses, she might feel strongly on this issue, which might then lead to some bias in she's charging them in more rigid ways than other types of protesters.
Yeah. And to be clear, when I talked to Rashida Tlaib, what she was talking about, that bias, she was talking about an anti-Palestinian bias that's across many institutions, news organizations, companies, attorney general's offices, governor mansions. There's definitely a anti-Palestinian bias. And most of those institutions aren't run by Jewish people. So when she said that, she's referring to an anti-Palestinian bias, not a bias because somebody is Jewish.
Right.
So it was a complete misrepresentation.
But I am pointing out, and I'm Jewish, I'm pointing out, it seems that Attorney General Nessel, this attack in Israel on October 7th, according to you, she's lost some friendships over it. So clearly she definitely, or it seems, is inclined to feel strongly in support of Israel's actions.
Absolutely.
Right. So we can't psychoanalyze, but when she's charging 11 students and alumni with things like ethnic intimidation, which I wasn't there, but seems like a stretch, and criminal trespassing and all these things, it seems that she did go a little further for this particular issue than she has in terms of Black Lives Matter protesters or other types of protesters in Michigan.
Yeah, I mean, and not even just a little further. She never charged any of those protesters. And I've been at some pretty violent protests in Detroit with violent clashes. And I mean, most of them were started by the police. But there were far more egregious instances of violence breaking out at protests that have never led to charges by the Attorney General's office. But suddenly this one does. So Rashida's saying, okay, what makes this one different? And why, I think you might remember there was the pipeline shutdown. There were some environmental protesters who shut down the pipeline that goes under the Mackinac Straits. She decided not to charge them. I mean, at what point is it fair to say there is not an equal treatment of these protesters? And I think that's the point that Rashida Tlaib was trying to make.
Well, I will go further. Obviously, people know I've reported on Flint for 8 years. You've reported on Flint a little bit too. It seems that she charged these pro-Palestinian protesters more harshly, some would say, than the former governor of Michigan, who, based on my reporting, presided over a massive, deadly cover-up of the Flint water. I mean, she charged him, or she would say her office, because she recused herself from the investigation. Her office charged him with a misdemeanor, which would have been, if convicted, the charges were thrown out, which is a whole nother story. He could have faced a $1,000 fine and a year in jail, which most people didn't think he would serve. Mm-hmm. So some of these charges are equal, if not worse, than the former governor of Michigan, which you got to wonder, again, I don't know what's in her head or her heart, but it does seem like you mentioned it's not even just that she charged more harsher. She has not charged other forms of protesters. And I mean, you have covered protests. Often protests involve trespassing where people are not charged or they're thrown in jail overnight. But, it doesn't go further than that. So it does seem like it went further. So I want to zero in on the mainstream media pickup of this, because, again, your interview with Rashida Tlaib, she did not mention that the Attorney General is Jewish. In your story, it's factual, just said she's the first Jewish Attorney General. And CNN picked this up. I don't know if it was to create a food fight, but they had Governor Whitmer on Sunday. And Jake Tapper, it seems to me, kind of stated it as fact that that Congresswoman Tlaib had made some type of anti-Semitic comment towards the Attorney General and tried to get the governor to weigh in. Let me just play that.
Your state's Attorney General, Dana Nessel, charged almost a dozen individuals from the University of Michigan over the anti-Israel protests. Among the charges, attempted ethnic intimidation, assaulting or obstructing a police officer, and on and on. These are pro-Palestinian protesters who are being punished and prosecuted. Michigan Democratic Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, who is Palestinian, she called the charges from Nessel, who is Jewish, shameful. And Tlaib said, quote, "It seems that the Attorney General decided if the issue was Palestine, she was going to treat it differently, and that alone speaks volumes about possible biases within the agency she runs," unquote. Nessel responded by saying, quote, "Rashida Tlaib should not use my religion to imply I cannot perform my job fairly as Attorney General. It's anti-Semitic and wrong," unquote. Do you think that Tlaib's suggestion that Nessel's office is biased was anti-Semitic?
Listen, Jake, you know what? All I can say is that I know that our Jewish community is in pain, as is our Palestinian and Muslim and Arab communities in Michigan. I know that seeing the, incredible toll that this war has taken on both communities has been really, really challenging and difficult, and my heart breaks for so many. But as governor, my job is to make sure that both these communities are protected and respected under the law in Michigan, and that's exactly what I'm going to stay focused on.
But do you think Attorney General Nessel is not doing her job? Because Congresswoman Tlaib is suggesting that she shouldn't be prosecuting these individuals that Nessel says broke the law, and that she's only doing it because she's Jewish and the protesters are not. That's quite an accusation. Do you think it's true?
Like I said, Jake, I'm not going to get in the middle of this argument that they're having. I can just say this. We do want to make sure that students are safe on our campuses, and we recognize that every person has the right to make their statement about how they feel about an issue, a right to speak out. And I'm going to use every lever of mine to ensure that both are true.
Basically saying that Governor Whitmer's statement and that statement by Governor Whitmer, let me just get that. Governor Whitmer did a total about face within 24 hours, and she said the suggestion that Attorney General Nessel would make charging decisions based on her religion as opposed to the rule of law is anti-Semitic. Attorney General Nessel has always conducted her work with integrity and followed the rule of law. We must all use our platform and voices to call out hateful rhetoric and racist tropes. I think the key word there was suggestion.
Yes,
because that's even a stretch that Rashida Tlaib had even suggested this, because she didn't. But they're basically, obviously we live in a post-truth society, and Trump and Republicans make up all sorts of stuff, before breakfast, and so do Democrats in ways. But there was no factual way for a journalistic outfit to state that Rashida Tlaib had said, inferred, suggested anything about the Attorney General decisions having to do with her being Jewish, but they just ran with this. And what I find the most jarring, I don't know, this kind of journalism 101, I would have reached out to you, the reporter who interviewed her, and said, hey, was there anything else other than the story that, the quotes that you gave that she said that mentioned that the Attorney General is Jewish? Did you infer anything from Congresswoman Tlaib to state that she was even dog whistling in what she meant by Jewish? As you pointed out, because you responded under that tweet, and you said, I'm the reporter. I'm the reporter who interviewed Rashida Tlaib. She never said Nessel did this because she's Jewish. Never. You're spreading lies. And that was in response to Jake Tapper. Simple question. Did CNN or any of the other outlets that ran with this ever reach out to you?
No, not at all. And I kept checking my email. I kept checking my Twitter messages thinking, somebody's going to contact me. I'm the one who did the interview. I know what she said. And no one did. And that's really bothersome to me because, look at what this is all doing is it's taking away from what's actually happening in Palestine right now. I mean, there are tens of thousands dead, and here we are stuck on this conversation of having to, because it's our responsibility as journalists to correct wrong statements, right? So, I mean, we're doing the responsible thing. But it just seems interesting to me, the timing of this all happened when Rashida Tlaib was made the target of a racist political cartoon. And this all came out at that point. And to make the suggestion that the media somehow is not anti-Palestinian, all you have to do is look at the response to this. And you see it from the governor's mansion, the attorney general's office, media outlets, CNN, all saying Rashida Tlaib said something that she didn't say, suggesting that the only Palestinian American in Congress is an anti-Semite. That's so irresponsible and dismissive of who she is, what her family has gone through. I mean, it's just an awful situation. And to hear Democrats doing this at a time like this, when they're locked in this election with somebody like Donald Trump, is just something I never thought I would see. But here we are.
I should point out that it wasn't just Jake Tapper, CNN's Dana Bash, who is Jewish and has invoked anti-Semitism for a lot of things surrounding the response to October 7th, and I think wrongly invoked anti-Semitism. She responded to this. Let's take a look.
And now to a sad reality, and that is anti-Semitism is everywhere, and it comes from both ends of the political spectrum. But politicians sometimes sidestep calling it out when it comes from a member of their own party. We saw two examples on State of the Union yesterday. First, with Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, when my co-anchor Jake Tapper asked about a Democratic Congresswoman's accusation that the state's Jewish Attorney General was letting her religion influence her job.
So there, again, just stating as fact that what Congresswoman Tlaib said was somehow anti-Semitism. Listen, I'm not a religious Jew, but I'll play the Jew card here. Real anti-Semitism exists. I've seen it on the road. I've seen it at rallies. I've seen it at Trump rallies. I've seen it at protests. There's plenty of real anti-Semitism that CNN could react to, that the Attorney General even could charge. But it seems to me this is a nothing burger. And what it does is kind of distracts from the main point. You mentioned it's distracting from what's going on in Gaza. I would also mention it's distracting from what is she charging these people for? Yeah. Because that is a very slippery slope. You're going to start charging pro-Palestinian protesters with ethnic intimidation. That's kind of a very broad legal statute or term. You're going to charge them with criminal trespassing, which is a misdemeanor, but could be 30 days in jail. Okay, so where does are the police in Michigan going to now change the definition of what is public and private property or what is trespassing? It seems that this has First Amendment, grave First Amendment ramifications. If she's going to start charging, students or alumni who just happen to be protesting for something that I can't get in her heart, but that she thinks is more egregious than, say, Black Lives Matter or climate or healthcare. Your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. You have to look at the situation. The county prosecutors in Ann Arbor said, we're not going to charge these protesters. We charged who we're going to charge in this protest, and that's it. So when they decided not to charge it, Dana Nessel's office gets it. Also lost in the news yesterday, it was Wayne County prosecutor Kim Worthy announced she wasn't going to charge protesters at a similar encampment at Wayne State University. So you have other county prosecutors in their county saying these protests were protected by the First Amendment and there was no crime committed. That's what Kim Worthy just said yesterday. But then you have the Attorney General intervene in a way she's never intervened in a protest. And that legitimately raises a question, why this one and why not another one? And then to attack the person who's asking legitimate questions and calling her an anti-Semite, it's awful, awful rhetoric that I'm used to seeing on the right. I'm not used to seeing this on the left. I know it happens, but it's really disturbing. And I mean, for me, I felt bad that that I had something to do with this because I published the interview. So when I heard about this, I was like, I got to fact check this. And I mean, luckily that fact check prompted Jake Tapper to change what he was saying. There was a far-right Jewish news outlet that changed their statement saying that Rashida Tlaib claimed that Nessel did this because she's Jewish to saying that she suggested it, which again, she didn't do. But I mean, to me, it's unfathomable that somebody who's making a very legitimate question gets labeled an anti-Semite because of something she didn't even say. Right. And then for people in the highest elected positions in Michigan, all defending that anti-Semite level.
Right. And I'm sure as we end, I'm sure the corrections are going to start flooding in. And I'm sure after this, CNN and the rest are going to reach out to you. But I am proud that it seems I was one of the first national outlets to actually do something radical. Why don't we reach out to the reporter who interviewed the congresswoman?
Yes.
Let's see. Let's see if she actually said what they're saying she said. I wish I had more time. Thank you so much, Steve Neavling. Everybody check out his work at the Detroit Metro Times. He does great work, including on breaking and exposing innocent people who are being imprisoned and kept in prison despite knowledge of their innocence. Steve, how can people find your work?
It's at Motor City Muck Creek. No, that's my old site. It's at metrotimes.com. Metrotimes.com. And I'm also on Twitter and Facebook.
All right. Thanks so much.
Hey, thanks so much, Jordan. Appreciate you.